Shalom, friends. Welcome to another Shear in Tanya, written by the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shmuel Zalman of Liadi, 18th century, also known as the book Sefer Shel Beinonim, the book for the average person, because indeed it is made for the average person. We can all learn from it, we can all grow from it. And within it, we really have the keys to developing ourselves, understanding who we are as souls within our bodies, and understanding even the psychology, the nature of the soul, the tests that we go through, how to overcome them, how to deal with matters of loving Hashem, fearing Hashem, and so on and so forth. It's a fascinating work. I'm Eliyahu Shear, coming to you from Chesed Ve'emet, broadcasting from the holy city of Yerushalayim. My site can be found at www.lovingkindness.co. As always, I welcome you to put your comments down below this video and to be in touch with me about any matters that you might have, questions or insights about what we're learning, whether it's on this subject or any other subject. So we're on chapter 19. Now, the Tanya has a type of a flow to it. Various chapters work together, and as you take chapters within a section, you get to understand one concept, and then you move to another section which has other concepts, and so on and so forth. Well, there's also a flow, a general flow to the Tanya. And that is what we're speaking about at the moment as per it relates to the fact of where we are at this point in time. In chapter 19, we're speaking about this idea, which followed on from chapter 18, of what's known as the ahava mesuteret, which is called a hidden love that exists within every single Jew. The hidden love is a love which is given as a gift to the Jewish people in general, to every single Jew, as a gift from his forefathers. Now, the thing that we were trying to get to is, how do we develop a love for Hashem altogether? And when we began our discussion of Tanya, as we keep on speaking this summary of where we're at each week, but it's important to know, and certainly if you happen to be listening to this video and haven't listened to previous videos, then already you'll have an insight into where we're coming from. That there are three classes of Jews: the tzaddik and the Beinoni and the Rasha, the righteous man, the average person who the Tanya is really written for, as we said before, and the evil person. And the tzaddik is somebody who is completely involved in good things, and the Rasha, unfortunately, is involved in doing negative things. And the Beinoni is a person who begins to work on himself in such a way that he controls himself, never to put into practice the Aveira, which might kind of seduce him for a brief second to enter into committing. Now, the tzaddik has no real problems in loving Hashem. It sort of comes naturally. He has control over his heart, and he's able to bring up this love and serve Hashem with this powerful, fiery love that exists in his heart. And then we learned later that the Beinoni has a similar type of love, but not exactly the same, because the Beinoni doesn't have 100% perfect control of the nature of his heart. And so what happens is, in order to generate this love, he needs to be able to think over what it means to love Hashem. What does the Torah speak about? Let me study some Torah. And as he begins to study the Torah, he develops a certain element called tevunah, which is an intellectual state of mind, of being, where he begins to love God in his mind. And through that, he's able to bring the love into everything that he does. But now, what about the average Jew? Not the Beinoni average Jew, but I'm talking about the average Jew who might not be on the level of the Beinoni. He has a hard time trying to get to love Hashem. But the Alter Rebbe taught us that the entire Tanya is based upon a pasuk which says, "V'karov elecha hadavar me'od, b'fika u'bilvavecha la'asoto." Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people that it is very close to one, in one's mouth, in one's heart, to do it. And therefore, since he told us it is close to everyone, it means that even to the Jew who's of the lowest level, he too can lock in to the love of Hashem. He can lock into the fulfillment of all these mitzvahs. He is no less than that tzaddik who loves Hashem and the Beinoni who loves Hashem. He can do it too. And then the Alter Rebbe tells us that we see a practical example of how it happens that a Jew who might be on a very low level shows this powerful love, which is called the ahava mesuteret, the hidden love. It's there all the time, but unfortunately, it is clothed over by a layer of a sack layer, a type of a garment that surrounds it, and it causes that the Jew somehow can't tap into it. But all of a sudden, when the Jew is faced with a test, an extreme test, that demands that he can even give up his life for God. For example, when he is told to worship idols, and he says to himself, I will not worship those idols. And the non-Jew who is talking to him says, if you will not do that, and you will not convert, and you will not serve these idols, I will kill you. And the Jew says, so be it. Amazing. All of a sudden, the Jew who is involved with all sorts of averas in his life changes his mind on the spot. And he says, it is more important for me to connect with Hashem than to lose out temporarily because I made this non-Jew happy in serving these particular idols. Nobody says it's an easy test, but it's amazing to see how many Jews have indeed given up their lives for God. Why did they do that? Because of the ahava mesuteret, because of the love that is hidden inside them, that is awoken at the time that this test comes about. The love is always there, but unfortunately, we can't always tap into it. When do we tap into it? At the time of crisis, when the test comes about and says, either you will do what we demand, something totally forbidden to the Torah, that God says, don't do it, absolutely forbidden, or we will kill you. All of a sudden, the Jew says, well, then you must kill me. How did that happen? He tapped into the love. The love was so suddenly awoken, and he said to himself, it is more important for me to have this connection with God and not commit this Avera than it would be to commit the Avera. And so therefore the Alter Rebbe is asking a question. And it's ultimately saying to us, well, if that's the case, why is it that a Jew will sin in any case? If a Jew is so willing to give up his life for the sake of a particular sin, not to commit it, and rather lose his life because he believes it's so big, he shouldn't do such a sin, why can't he think the same way when it comes to every sin? That is really the question that the Alter Rebbe is asking us, and as we progress, we see the answer in more detail. Now, this is where we got to last week. I'm just doing a quick refresh of the last line that we learned. V'hinei, and behold, Or Hashem, the light of Hashem, Ein Sof, the infinite one, Baruch Hu, blessed is he, Hamelubash b'chokhmah shebenefesh, which is enclosed in the wisdom, the chokhmah, which means to say that attributes this part of our spiritual system that is inside the soul. Gadol v'atzum kocho kol kach. It is so strong and so powerful in strength that it is able to garesh v'lidchot sitra akra. It is able to exile and to push out the other side, referring to the forces of negativity, v'aklipot, and all of the husks, the shells, the peels, the negative sources of creation. When a person, a Jew, is faced with this test in front of him, to either commit the Aveira, which is terrible, worshipping that idol, or giving up his life, the Chokhmah, which ultimately is that Sephirah, where God hides himself, ultimately that Ahava Mesuteret, this Ahavas Mesuteret, the love which is hidden inside, is actually hiding inside that Sephirah of Chokhmah. It's way above Bina, and it's way above that. It exists on a level that's almost surrounding us, if we could say that, but it's not really surrounding us. It's on our innermost level. If we can just tap into that innermost level of who we are, we'd see the love is there all the time. And if only we could do it with every single Aveira that comes our way, we'd never commit any Aveira. So the Chokhmah wakes up. Shelo yichlu yig'u afilu bilabushav. And as a result, the Sitra Akra and the Klipot are not able to touch even his garments. What are the garments of the Jew? Shehei machshava, dibur, u'maseh. These are the garments of thought, of speech, and action, which means to say that not only is it that the Jew is willing to give up his life completely, meaning the following. Not only that, but the love is so great, and the power of that chokhmah is so great, that even if the Jew doesn't believe in what he's doing, he will not allow himself to manually or automatically, whichever way we want to do it, do the particular action even though he's not there while he's doing it. Which means to say, even if all the klippah could do to the person is influence him to bow his body down, the physical act of bowing down, and even though it will not affect him in the rest of his service to God, the chokhmah, the power of that love that exists there is so strong that it will not even allow the influence of the klippah to have an influence upon him in the action that he does, in the speech that he's involved in, or the thoughts. Never mind his inner essence. It won't even affect his external behavior. Shel emunas Hashem echad, of the faith that he has in the one God. Dahainu, which means la'amod ben nisayon, he is able to withstand the test. Limsor nafsho, in order to give up his soul for the sake of God. The love is too strong. The chokhmah wakes up. That's what we said. Until the chokhmah wakes up and makes him aware of what he's about to do, he can be doing other averas, meantime, other sins, God forbid. The chokhmah is also with him, but it's sleeping. It's within him, but it's sleeping. Now what we need to do is something has to cause an arousal, to awaken the chokhmah. When this test comes around, it is enough of an arousal to cause him to wake up and realize that the sin that he's about to do is so terrible that it will sever him completely from God. And the Jew does not want that. And therefore the Jew he puts himself in a situation that he would much rather give up his life than to submit to the wishes of this non-Jew to serve this idol. And even if it would be only to do an action, he's not going to do it. Levad, only that. Neged emunas Hashem echad. If all he had to do is that the non-Jew said to him, bow down to this idol. Doesn't mean to say, I want you to become an idol worshiper. We just want to see that you're able to move your body so that it will bow down to the idol. The Jew says, I will not do that. The chokhmah is so powerful that it wipes out, it completely nullifies any aspect of the klippah, not to allow it to exert itself and make itself present in the way that it wants to. Kagon, for example, lishtachavos la'avodah zorah, in order to bow down to idolatry. Even though he doesn't believe in the idolatry at all, he will not bow down. Meaning, you could still bow down, the person could still bow down and walk away and do Kiddush on Friday night and keep Shabbos. And somebody will say to him, didn't you bow down to the idol? He said, bow down. What's bowing down got to do with it? You think I believe in idols? Here I am keeping Shabbos. Here I am making brachot. Here I am being kosher. I'll never bow. I never need to have a connection with idols. I say, why do you do it? Well, I just did it because I want to make that non-Jew happy and I get back to my life. No, the power of the chokhmah is so great that it will totally wipe out any element of klippah, that the Jew will not even commit the avera with one of the three garments of the soul. V'chein, likewise, she'lo ledaber to'eh chas v'shalom al achdus Hashem, that a person will not speak falsely, God forbid, on the unity of Hashem, meaning to say that God is more than one, God forbid. A Jew will not say that. God is only one. How can a Jew say that God is anything more than one? God is only one. And even though his heart and his mouth and his heart are not equal, which means to say that he doesn't even believe what he's saying. Even if he would say it to make the non-Jew happy, he says the words, and he says to this non-Jew, yes, he says, you know, that it could be God, maybe he does exist in an aspect of this aspect and this aspect, and maybe he's part of this and part of that and whatnot. And in his heart, he says to himself, I'm only saying that to the non-Jew to make him happy. But the reality is, you think I believe it? I don't believe it for a second. Everybody knows that God is one. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. I would never believe such a thing. But even then, the chokhmah is too powerful. It overrides it, and it will cause that the Jew will not stumble, even in an external act pertaining to one of the three soul garments. Only his heart is complete in the faith of Hashem. And this is what's called fear, hanichlal berechimu, and it is included within love, because as part of our relationship with God, in order to effect a real relationship, it is insufficient to engage only in a love of Hashem. Unfortunately, there are many groups of Jews in the world who serve God on the level of love alone, but they forget about fear. Let us illustrate that. A Jew says, I will go to shul on Shabbos because I love God. And while I'm at shul on Shabbos, we will sit together, the men and the women, we'll all sing together because we want to show our love for God. Perhaps we will hold hands, God forbid, in the shul. It's getting worse and worse in terms of the halacha, but they do it. They do it all in the name of their love of God. But unfortunately, it is not acceptable, because in order to love God, one also needs to fear God. Fearing God is to realize that although I should be at shul on Shabbos, it does not mean I can drive to shul on Shabbos. The fear must hold me back so that the love can remain in place. A couple who are involved in an intimate relationship and they get married, it will be insufficient for the couple to be all over themselves in a relationship of love alone. They will need to put boundaries within the relationship to keep each other apart at times. That is what is going to hold this relationship together. They need to know from each other where the points are that say, no, at this point in time, we cannot go this far. We cannot do this particular thing, whatever it might be. I'm not referring to anything in particular. I'm speaking about the idea of a relationship which is intimate, and yet at the same time, there is an aspect of respect. You see, for example, a couple go out on their first date or their second date, and they're preparing to meet somebody else in order to marry them. You see how they respect each other. You see how they dress up. In most cases, of course, they dress up smart and they talk nicely to each other and they're polite. Perhaps the man takes out the chair so that he lets the lady sit on the chair, and he pushes the chair back in again. And perhaps he opens up the door of his car and he waits for her to get in and he closes the door. Well, these are just nice little etiquette things that he could be doing. But funnily enough, after 10 dates or 20 dates, whatever it may be, however far he gets, suddenly he may stop doing these things. You see, that's where the danger might come about. Because in order for the relationship to flourish, the same respect that they had for each other in the beginning must continue throughout the relationship. If the couple become too overwhelming in their love for each other, and there isn't a barrier that separates them, that says, no, please do not enter past this barrier, the relationship will fall apart, because too much giving of the one side to the other, becomes overwhelming and can be destructive. So therefore, what we're speaking about here is the same idea. This Jew is trying to develop this love for Hashem, but in order to attain the real love for Hashem, it is also necessary that there be this aspect of fear. How did the fear come about? When this Jew was offered, excuse the expression, the opportunity to serve this particular idol, he could say, well, I love Hashem, and in any case, I think it's much better for me to serve Hashem all the days of my life. Meanwhile, I'll serve this idol for a brief moment, and I will continue on my love of Hashem path for as long as I shall live. Well, that's very nice, but this is exactly what we're saying. We need the fear aspect, which says, no, I may not do this Aveira, because by doing this Aveira, I separate myself from God, and I do not want to be separated from God even for a moment. When a Jew commits any Aveira, he separates himself from God. But the average Jew knows well that when he commits an Aveira of this standard, that is so powerful, like worshipping an idol, he knows clearly how much he is going to break that relationship. And the power of that fear prevents him from serving that particular idol. This is what we're talking about now, that it's so important, as we say, that the fear is included within the love in order to make this relationship a successful one. And this is the natural love of the godly soul, shebeklalos Yisrael, which is within the Jewish people. Shechafetza uretzoina, that its desire and its will, betiva, in its nature, is lidabek b'shorsho u'makora, is in order to cleave to its roots and to its source, or Ein Sof Baruch Hu. This is the nature of the Jewish soul. It is like a fire. It is like the flame that exists on the wick of the candle, that is constantly fluttering to expire into where it came from. The soul of the Jew is constantly desiring to cleave to the Creator and return back to the Creator. That is this love. Shemipnei ahava zo, that on account of this love, v'ratzon zo ze, and on account of this desire, he yere'ah umefachedet, it is scared. You see that? From the love that it has towards God, it is afraid, umefachedet, and it is fearing, betiva, in its nature, min goa biktsei tumas avodah zora chas shalom, even to touch at the very end point of the impurity of serving idols, God forbid. This Jew does not even want to touch the extremist end part of the possibility that it should even get what we would say it smacks of avodah zorah. There's this tinge of avodah zorah. The fear that is contained within the love holds the Jew back. That is the power of the love. It is so great that within it is an element of fear that holds it back from doing what it shouldn't in order to maintain the love that it should really have. Shehi neged emunas Hashem echad. And this is against the faith of the one God. Afilu b'levushei ha'chitzonim. Even if it would only have to do it with its external garments. Shehem dibur or ma'aseh, which is speech and action. Beli emunah, without any faith whatsoever. Believe klal, in the heart at all. So we see over here, this is the nature of every Jew. Within him is an ahava misuteret. It's a hidden love. And he can wake it up anytime that he wants to. The truth is, it usually wakes itself up at certain moments. When the test is so great that love says, don't do it. Well, what made him not do it? The love? No, the fear inside the love. There was this aspect that said, I never want to tear myself away from God. The relationship is too important for me. I'm scared of losing the relationship, which is so beautiful in love. So therefore, he holds back and he gives up everything of himself rather to die than to commit an aveira and to be separated from God. Now, we move on to chapter 20. And chapter 20 is going to take us one step further in our journey in understanding this concept. What is it that we need to understand? Chapter 19 has made it clear to us. There are certain times that a Jew will never commit an aveira because he does not want to become separated from God. He wants to remain connected with the unity of God, of godliness. But here's the catch. Every time we commit the slightest aveira, we do in fact separate ourselves from God. When we take that muktzah on Shabbos, never mind that we broke Shabbos in reality, that we lit a fire, that we made food, we cooked the food, whatever it is that we did, never mind that. But even if we took a pen that we didn't write with, and we picked up the pen and showed it to people and said, look, everybody, I'm not going to break Shabbos. I will not write on Shabbos. And he puts the pen down. The pen is muktzah. And the moment he touches that pen, he creates a separation between him and God. Well, if he commits the idol worship, he makes a separation between himself and God. If he picks up that pen on Shabbos, the muktzah, he makes a separation between himself and God. Any aveira that a Jew does causes a separation. He may not feel it. That's true. But that's the sad part. He should be in touch. He should realize something is happening. But most of us don't feel it. Fine. But the fact that he doesn't feel it does not mean that it doesn't take place. The question is, if the Jew was able to master himself enough for the aveira of idolatry and not to commit it, because of his commitment to God, his love and his fear, he will not commit that aveira. Why does the Jew go ahead and commit other aveiras? Could he not use that same logic within every aveira to prevent him from committing that aveira? And therefore, he will never come to commit an aveira. And isn't that what the Beinoni is all about? That is where we started Tanya. The Beinoni is a person who will never commit an Aveira, neither in action, nor in speech, nor in thought. The thoughts might come to him, and that's all right. That's his test. What can we do about it? But when the thought comes to him, the Beinoni says, I will not commit that Aveira. And he sends the thought out of his mind because he wants to remain connected to Hashem. So therefore, the person who finds himself that indeed he feels disconnected from Hashem because he is committing those Aveiras, needs to work on himself to achieve this level, to become the Beinoni. How does he do it? He needs to be able to tap into this level of the Ahava Mesoteret, which exists inside himself. And every time that the Aveira presents itself to him, he needs to think the same way that he does at the time of the idol worship, in the same way now in touching and moving that pen on Shabbos. Let us see more about how one can go ahead and implement this idea, how one can see it for oneself. Because this thing is very close to us. If it is very close to us, it means we should be able to tap into it. It means we should be able to hold ourselves back from committing that Aveira. There's Shabbos, there's Kashrut, there's the laws of Mitzvah and charity, not charging interest to a fellow Jew, putting on tefillin. How many halachot can we start thinking about? Sukkahs and Lulav and Esrog and Pesach and Matzah and Maror and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah and Shofar. Look at all the mitzvahs we have and the possibilities of transgressing by committing Aveiros. But I don't want to separate myself from Hashem. How can I hold myself back that I will never commit an Aveira and I will become this Beinoni, which is here the objective? Begins chapter 20. V'hine, and behold, moda'as zois, this thing is known, lekol, to everybody, ki mitzvahs v'azharas avodah zorah, that the mitzvahs and the warning of avodah zorah, these are mitzvahs which are practically doable, positive things, and the warning of avodah zorah, don't commit idolatry, shehem shnei dibros harishonos. These are in fact the two of the first of the 10 commandments. The first commandment, which doesn't seem to be much of a commandment, says, I'm Hashem your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. I don't understand how that's a commandment, but so it is. And the second commandment says, you shall have no other gods before me. And that, of course, is the mitzvah or the aveira, whichever way we're looking at it, of not committing idolatry. The fact that the first commandment says, I am the Lord your God, is in fact the mitzvah to believe in all positive mitzvahs. I am God, which means if I am God, you need to accept upon yourself the fulfillment of all positive mitzvahs. Likewise, if it says you shall have no gods before me, that is the negative side, don't commit idolatry. The Midrash speaks about this story of a nation who asked the king to rule over it. They found a very smart king in the community, and they said to the king, would you please rule over us? You are a very wise man. For example, like Yosef HaTzadik. There was a terrible famine that was about to take place. And Yosef HaTzadik was a very smart man. And he would save the whole of Egypt and the world from the famine that was currently happening. He had a plan. Well, he had to be appointed as the king, or in other words, as the viceroy of Egypt, in order to execute this particular plan. Had he just been walking around and people had said to him, would you please take over the situation? He would not have been able to do so. How was he able to do so? This is the Midrash. The Midrash says the people came up to the king and they said, please, would you rule over us? And the king said, first, you must accept my rules. After you accept my rules, I can rule over you. The moment you accept what it is that is required to do, then I'm able to rule you. But if you don't accept what I'm telling you to do in the first instance, how can I rule over you? I can only, as a king, rule over the community that in the first instance is being prepared to accept the rules that I'm telling them to fulfill. But if they say, oh, mighty king, we heard that you say that we will be unable to work one day of the week. But mighty King, this is not possible in our society. But still, mighty King, you are so smart. Would you please rule over us? The king will laugh in their face. If you want me to rule you, to make sure that the country functions correctly, that the country has food, that the country is taken care of, you need to trust me and you need to fulfill all the rules that I put down. So too God says, if you want to accept me as the king, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. You want me to be the king for you? You need to accept all my mitzvot. What are the mitzvahs? You shall do this, you shall do this, you shall do this. The positive mitzvahs. Number 2, the negative. Everything is included in, you shall have no other gods before me. Because anything that we do against God as an Aveira tells us that there is idolatry involved. After all, if we aren't serving an idol, there is at least one other thing that we are serving. It is ourselves. In other words, if God says, you shall not eat pork, pig, and the person says, oh, mighty God, you are so mighty, I would do everything I could possibly do for you. I love humanity. I want to give charity. But God, as far as I'm concerned, eating pork is totally acceptable, and this I will not accept. Then he is an idolater. He does not believe in worshiping God, who has told him not to do this thing, because who is he now worshiping? Himself. So therefore, wherever we go against an Aveira, wherever we go against the mitzvah, we commit the Aveira, we show in our arrogance our separation from God. That's the danger. And as a result, we don't accept God. We distance ourselves from him. And of course, this is not going to help us create this relationship that we're trying to attain to connect to Hashem. What's interesting, of course, many people don't know this, but there was a great rabbi that lived, let's say, 1,200 years ago, approximately, Rabbi Sadia Gaon, 1,200 years ago, Rabbi Sadia Gaon, and he wrote a book, an amazing thing, which is called Sefer HaMitzvahs. And in this book, he details that all 613 mitzvahs can, in fact, be found hidden in the 10 Commandments. This is amazing, because if one takes the number 613 and one adds the numbers together, 6 plus 1 plus 3, one gets 10. Then the 10 Commandments, one can find all 613 mitzvahs, which means when a person observes the 10 Commandments, then in itself, he observes all 613 mitzvahs. Now, of course, we need to be able to find how we find tefillin in the 600 in the 10 Commandments. We need to find how do we find kashrut, or how do we find all the different mitzvahs. Well, take Rabbi Sadia Gaon's book and do a reading through it so that we can see exactly how he puts the things together. But more than that, there's a deeper idea, because within the first 2 commandments, the entire Torah is also included. So it's not just the 613 in the 10, but in fact the 613 in the first 2. How does that work? The positive, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, that refers to all positive mitzvahs. When I perform positive mitzvahs, I'm connecting with that first mitzvah. You shall have no other gods before me. Negative mitzvahs. The moment I refrain from committing any aveira, I connect with that second level, which means all of the 248 positive mitzvahs hook in to that first mitzvah of the 10 Commandments. All 365 negative mitzvahs hook in and connect with the second of the 10 Commandments. What is also fascinating, just an interesting gematria, is that the 10 Commandments has within it, by no coincidence, 620 letters. 620 corresponds to 613, which refers to the 613 mitzvot of the Torah, which are all included in the 10 Commandments, plus 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. There are 7 mitzvahs that apply to the rest of the world. The mitzvahs are that we must accept only one God, not to commit murder, not to commit adultery, not to steal, to put Jewish courts, to put courts in the world that function in order to put these mitzvahs in practice, not to eat the limb of a living animal, and not to blaspheme God, not to curse God. These are the 7 main mitzvahs that apply to all of the nations of the world. And the Jewish people have to fulfill 613 mitzvahs. And within all of that is this magical number of 620, which corresponds to those 10 commandments. In other words, God's will is included within the 10 commandments, all 613, all 620 mitzvahs. Now, where we're starting from over here and where we're ending off the Shear now is this idea that ultimately we will find all positive mitzvahs are actually included in that first mitzvah. All negative mitzvahs are included in the second of the 10 commandments. And from here, we are going to understand a deeper concept of how we can all tap in to that hidden love, so that no matter what mitzvah or aveira we encounter, in particular an aveira, we will not be tempted to desire to do that, knowing fully well that by committing that aveira, we are actually separating ourselves from God just as much as when we commit the aveira of idolatry, and there too also we separate ourselves from God. We need to know how to connect with God. That is, of course, the objective of the Tanya, and we need to learn more about what's preventing us from doing it and how to get closer to Hashem so that indeed we can connect to Him. Thanks very much for joining me. We've reached the end of the Shear. I'm Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, coming to you from the holy city of Yerushalayim. My website can be found on www.lovingkindness.co. If you've enjoyed this Shear, please give my video a like. People don't understand what that means. Well, you're helping me not just tell me about how the video works, but you're actually helping me to develop my YouTube channel and create even further interest. Please share this video with family and friends and become a subscriber of my channel if you are not yet a subscriber. If you would like to, please feel free to be in touch with me via my website on any subject of Torah and life. All you need to do is visit my site, send through a contact form with whatever question you have or insights, and I'd be happy to see what you're sharing and to respond. Or alternatively, feel free to make a comment on the comment section below this video and turn this video also into something a little bit more interactive. In the meantime, I say thank you very much for joining me for the Shear, and as always, if you'd like to join Chesed Ve'emet and partner with us in our activities, please come to our website, see what we're doing, and make a contribution to help us to do even more of what we want to do. I look forward to another Shear in the near future, and I wish you everything of the best. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.